your impression of a man, given the perception that the Western press tried to create about a man who was isolated, cut away from others, and not fully in control of his own system?
Well, look, if I wanted a reading about President Putin, I'm not sure I'd go to the Western press for an objective assessment.
Did the diplomats in Delhi get outmaneuvered diplomatically by the generals in Rawalpindi?
I would have been surprised if you didn't ask me that question.
India-Russia ties for a very long time. There was no public conversation about more S-400s being purchased or S-500 being purchased or even the Su-57. Given the fact that China now plays an important role in the supply chains of Russian defense armaments, Dr. Jaishankar, would India be willing to consider buying, say, the Su-57 from Moscow? And how much at the back of your head would be playing the fact that some of the critical tech inside could actually be coming from China?
I would have been surprised if you didn't ask me that question. The answer is that yes, there was what we call the Intergovernmental Commission, the military technical cooperation side of it meeting. From our side, Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh ji was the chair. Their defense ministers, the Russian co-chair, they had the meetings. But I'm telling you, what the summit itself did. Of course, we have good defense cooperation. Again, it's been a very continuous dimension of our cooperation with Russia. But where specifics are concerned, that's for the various systems to work out and do in their own way.
You dodged my question, which is fine. You're trying to further India-Russia ties at a time when the United States would have ideally wanted greater strategic alignment, which now seems very, very difficult. But do you think, given that you're in the final stages, or at least attempting to push through the first tranche of an India-US trade deal, President Putin's very public visit to India complicates negotiations with DC?
No, I disagree with you. I think everybody knows that India has relations with all the major countries of the world, and I think for any country to expect to have a veto or a say in how we develop our relations with others is not a reasonable proposition, because remember, the others can expect the same. So I think we've always made it very clear that we have multiple relationships. We have a freedom of choice. We talk about what is called strategic autonomy, and that continues. And I cannot imagine why anybody would have reason to expect the contrary.
Outside of just the joint statement, what was your impression of the mind, given the fact that when President Putin went into Ukraine, so much was said in the Western press about whether he's in control, whether he's fully in charge. You were at the state dinner, and when I saw at Rashtrapati Bhavan last evening, the man has a huge commanding presence. Right at the end, Prime Minister Modi and he went into a corner. They had this one-on-one going on for several minutes. What was your impression of a man, given the perception that the Western press tried to create about a man who was isolated, cut away from others, and not fully in control of his own system?
Well, look, if I wanted a reading about President Putin, I'm not sure I'd go to the Western press for an objective assessment.
Sure. You want to leave it there?
Well, I think that's an answer, isn't it?
Okay. No, so let's build on this further by asking you for a reading of what you think is happening with American President Donald Trump at the moment. Given the fact that India invested so much, the Prime Minister himself invested so much in the India-America relationship, are you extremely disappointed with the Trump administration and how transactional they're choosing to be?
Well, look, every government and certainly every American president has their own way of approaching the world. I grant you that in the case of President Trump, it's radically different from how his predecessors did. I think he himself would say that. We have right now a set of issues which the relationship is grappling with. I mean, to me, look, foreign policy doesn't always, everything doesn't go your way all the time on all the issues, on all the relationships. So there will be issues. You know, it is with the US today, it could be with somebody else tomorrow. What you try to do is to engage and work through those issues, and we believe that there can be a landing point for our respective trade interests. Obviously, that is something which will be negotiated and negotiated hard because it has an implication for livelihoods in this country. You know, at the end of the day, for us, the interests of the workers and the farmers and the small business and the middle class matters. So when we look at a trade agreement with a country like the United States, you have to be extremely judicious about your position, about what you put on the table.
How optimistic are you at the moment? Are we days away, weeks away, months away, potentially years away from just the first part of the trade deal?
Well, look, diplomacy, you're always optimistic, because I'm not saying that as a way of stalling you, which I am, but also because, look, it's suddenly things can turn around. It can turn around on one weekend. I could tell you on Friday, oh, I don't think it's likely, and maybe it'll happen on Monday, and you will think that I was misleading you. So it can happen.
No, with Trump, we totally get it. Given the fact that on the other side of the negotiating table is President Trump, we won't blame you. We'll get why that happened.
So, we've had, there's no lack of communication. There's no lack of negotiation. It's something which has gone through multiple rounds. We have to see when the call is taken and on what terms. So if you ask me, could it happen soon? My answer would be, sure, very possible. If you say, well, maybe soon may take a little longer, maybe, I don't know.
Dr. Jaishankar, the end of the year is a good time for reflection. Many amongst your peers and those around you consider you one of the sharpest diplomatic brains of your generation. If I ask you to look back at the time of Operation Sindoor, what are the cards or moves that you would have liked to play differently so that India didn't end up in the diplomatic soup that it did with President Trump? Because many in academic and think tank circles would argue that did the diplomats in Delhi get outmaneuvered diplomatically by the generals in Rawalpindi?
No, look, let me take it in two parts. I think where India is concerned, there are things we do and there are things we don't. That's why we are India. We have rules, we have norms. If we take any step, we are accountable in this country, accountable to the people, to the media, to the civil society. So, when it's very easy to say these things, but clearly people were, a much more autocratic, oligarchic polity, where there are virtually no rules of conduct in pretty much any sphere, can do things which we can't. I think it would be unreal to compare ourselves to them. And in many ways, I think we would be doing ourselves injustice. At the end of the day, we are people with a certain sense of ourselves, with a certain set of rules about how we conduct ourselves and what we do and we don't. And I think that's very important to maintain.
No, but there are people sitting here who've told me in the past that maybe we could have played our cards slightly differently by playing to his ego, indulging him to some extent without giving in on what he wanted to project. That we thank him at some level without necessarily saying that he brokered the ceasefire, that there were ways and means around the box that we ended up in.
It is the fate of every player to have a wiser commentator in the commentator's box. So I would at least respect those commentators who have at least played.
Many of these are past players.
Look, here is a point. There was a certain reality, Now, I think we owe it to ourselves to stay with that reality and stay with that record. And I don't think I need to belabor that point. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we have to stand up for what is our interest and what is our, I would say, view of where the relationship should go and what terms it should go.
Is it fair then to say, Dr. Jaishankar, that the relationship with the United States is moving from a zone of strategic alignment to now being increasingly transactional?